The university cafe buzzed with the usual Friday afternoon energy. Students hunched over laptops, friends caught up over coffee, and in the corner a small group celebrated Lily's 21st birthday. Among them sat Olivia, quietly observing as she always did, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her notebook filled with equations from her advanced calculus class. Olivia hadn't planned to join the celebration. Group gatherings made her nervous, but Lily had insisted. "You can't spend every Friday in the math lab," she'd said, practically dragging Olivia away from her studies. Now surrounded by mostly music and arts majors, Lily's friends from her drama program, Olivia felt even more out of place than usual. "Let's move to Rosetta's for dinner," Lily suggested, gathering her things. "They have that nice back room we can reserve. And the food is amazing." The group murmured in agreement, and 20 minutes later, they were being led through the cozy Italian restaurant to a semi-private room in the back. Olivia paused in the doorway, her breath catching when she spotted it. A beautiful upright piano tucked into the corner of the room. Her fingers twitched at her sides, a reflex she couldn't control. It had been weeks since she'd touched a piano. The practice rooms in the music building were technically open to all students, but Olivia only went late at night when she was sure no one would hear her. The last thing she needed was someone discovering that Olivia Chen, the serious math major who barely spoke in study groups, secretly played piano with a passion that contradicted her reserved exterior. "Earth to Olivia," Lily nudged her. "You're blocking the doorway." "Sorry," Olivia mumbled, stepping aside and taking a seat at the large round table, deliberately choosing a spot with her back to the piano. Out of sight, out of mind, or so she hoped. The evening progressed pleasantly enough. Olivia relaxed a bit after her first glass of wine, even joining the conversation occasionally. The food arrived, platters of pasta, garlic bread, and salads. And for a while the piano remained unnoticed by the group. Then Thomas, one of Lily's friends, spotted it. "Hey, does anyone play?" he asked, gesturing toward the piano. "We should give Lily a musical birthday tribute." A few people laughed and shook their heads. Olivia stared down at her plate, suddenly finding her fettuccine alfredo incredibly interesting. "Daniel plays," someone volunteered, pointing to a lanky guy with glasses who Olivia had met only tonight. Daniel shook his head. "I'm terrible. 3 years of lessons as a kid and all I remember is chopsticks." "I'll play," announced a confident voice from the end of the table. Olivia looked up to see Paul setting down his wine glass. She didn't know him well, but his reputation preceded him. A third-year piano performance major, he'd won several competitions and, according to Lily, never let anyone forget it. Tall, with carefully styled brown hair and an expensive watch that caught the light when he gestured, Paul carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting his place in the world. "I've got a piece I'm working on for my junior recital," he said, standing up and straightening his collar. "I can give you all a preview." The group clapped as Paul made his way to the piano. He sat down, adjusted the bench with practiced movements, and launched into a technically complex piece that Olivia recognized as Liszt. His fingers flew across the keys with precision, and he played with obvious skill, though Olivia noticed something missing in his interpretation, a certain emotional quality that the piece called for but Paul's performance didn't quite capture. When he finished, everyone applauded enthusiastically. Paul stood and took a small bow, clearly pleased with himself. "That was beautiful," Lily gushed. "I wish I could play like that." "It takes years of dedicated training," Paul said, returning to the table. "Most people don't have the discipline." His gaze swept around the table, and Olivia quickly looked down again. Something about the way Paul carried himself reminded her of the boys in her high school, who'd mocked her for spending lunch periods in the library instead of the cafeteria. The conversation moved on. But every few minutes, Olivia found herself glancing at the piano. Her fingers drummed silently against her leg under the table, playing phantom notes of the piece she'd been working on before midterms consumed all her free time. She didn't realize how obvious her glances had become until Paul's voice cut through her thoughts. "Do you play?" he asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer would be no. Every head at the table turned toward Olivia. Her cheeks warmed under the sudden attention. A little," she admitted, immediately regretting the confession. Paul's eyebrows rose. "Really? What's your major again?" "Engineering?" "Mathematics," Olivia corrected quietly. Mathematics, Paul repeated with a small smirk. And you play piano a little. What does that mean exactly? Some basic scales?
Heart and soul?
A few people at the table shifted uncomfortably. Lily frowned at Paul. Don't be a jerk, Paul, she said. Paul held up his hands. I'm not being a jerk. I'm genuinely curious. There's nothing wrong with playing at a beginner level. Everyone starts somewhere. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. Olivia wished she could disappear under the table. This was exactly why she kept her piano playing private. Leave her alone, Thomas said. Not everyone needs to show off their talents. I'm not asking her to show off, Paul insisted, though his tone suggested otherwise. I'm just curious about her experience. Olivia took a deep breath. My grandmother taught me. She was a piano teacher. That's nice, Paul said in the same tone someone might use to compliment a child's crayon drawing. Family lessons? So what kinds of pieces do you play? Beginner Bach? Some simple Mozart? Olivia felt a flicker of irritation cutting through her embarrassment. Her grandmother had been no ordinary piano teacher. Mei-Lin Chen had studied at Juilliard before moving to a small town and opening a modest studio, where she taught generations of students. More importantly, she had poured her heart and soul into teaching Olivia, spending countless hours guiding her granddaughter's hands over the keys, teaching her that music was a language that spoke directly to the heart. Various pieces, Olivia said vaguely, hoping to end the conversation. But Paul wasn't finished. He leaned forward, a challenge in his eyes. Why don't you play something for us? Since you know how. The table fell silent. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. I don't think, she began. Come on, Paul interrupted. Don't be shy. If you can play, show us. If not, he shrugged. Well, there's no shame in admitting you're just a beginner. Paul, Lily hissed. Stop it. What? Paul looked around the table with exaggerated innocence. I'm encouraging her to share her talent. Isn't that what friends do? Olivia felt trapped. If she refused, Paul would take it as confirmation that she couldn't really play. If she agreed and didn't meet his standards, she'd face his mockery. Neither option appealed to her. You don't have to, Olivia, Lily assured her. Yeah, Paul's just being a show-off, added Thomas. Paul rolled his eyes. I'm simply suggesting that if someone claims they can play piano, they should be willing to demonstrate. He turned back to Olivia. Unless you were exaggerating your abilities? Something shifted inside Olivia. The memory of her grandmother surfaced, her gentle hands guiding Olivia's much smaller ones, her patient voice explaining that music wasn't about impressing others, but expressing what lived in your heart. Mei-Lin had never pushed Olivia to perform for others, understanding her granddaughter's shyness. But she had also taught Olivia that true musicianship required courage, the courage to be vulnerable, to let others see inside your soul. Her grandmother had passed away 2 years ago, during Olivia's freshman year. The piano in her apartment had been sold, and Olivia had thrown herself into her studies, playing only occasionally in empty practice rooms when the grief and pressure became too much. Music had become her secret refuge, something private and precious. And now this arrogant stranger was trying to turn it into a competition, a chance to publicly rank her abilities against his own and find her wanting. You know what? I think everyone would love to hear what happens when someone who thinks practicing scales makes them a pianist tries to play something real, Paul said, his voice carrying across the table. Go on, Olivia. Show us what your grandmother taught you. Several people at the table looked uncomfortable now. Lily started to say something, but Olivia was already standing up, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine, she said quietly. As she walked toward the piano, Paul continued his commentary, loud enough for everyone to hear. This should be educational for everyone. See, there's a huge difference between someone who plays as a hobby and a trained musician. It's like the difference between someone who can add numbers and an actual mathematician. Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she reached the piano. She sat down on the bench, adjusting it without thinking, muscle memory taking over. The familiar feel of the bench beneath her, the keys before her. It brought back a flood of memories. Saturday mornings in her grandmother's sunlit apartment, the smell of jasmine tea, her grandmother's patient voice. Music is mathematics of the heart, Olivia. You understand both. Behind her, she could hear Paul still talking, making jokes about math majors trying to be artistic, that earned a few uncomfortable laughs. Olivia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had a choice to make. Olivia's fingers hovered over the piano keys. The restaurant sounds faded into the background. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, the occasional burst of laughter from other tables. In this moment, there was only Olivia and the piano. Behind her, she could feel the weight of everyone's eyes. Paul's challenge hung in the air, his smug certainty that she would embarrass herself. Part of her wanted to stand up and walk back to the table, to tell them all that she didn't have to prove anything to anyone. That would be the sensible thing to do. But another part of her, the part that carried her grandmother's spirit, urged her forward. She thought about her grandmother's hands, weathered by time but still graceful on the keys. Maylin had never pushed Olivia to perform for others, understanding her granddaughter's shyness. Music is a conversation between your soul and the universe, she used to say. Whether anyone else hears it is secondary. Yet her grandmother had also taught her about courage. Sometimes, Olivia, you must let your music speak when words cannot. Was this one of those times? Olivia took another deep breath. Her hands were steady now as she placed them on the keys. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge Paul or the others watching. Instead, she closed her eyes and let her fingers find their home. The first notes of Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor filled the room. Soft at first, almost questioning, like a shy voice gaining confidence with each word. Olivia felt the familiar melody wrap around her like an old friend. This wasn't a piece for beginners. It was one of the most challenging works in piano literature, demanding both technical skill and emotional depth. It had been her grandmother's favorite, and the last piece they had worked on together before her passing. As Olivia played, memories flowed through her fingers into the keys. The countless hours of practice. The way her grandmother would sit beside her on the bench, sometimes playing along, sometimes just listening with her eyes closed. The smell of jasmine tea always brewing in the kitchen, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the apartment windows, painting patterns on the old upright piano that had been in the family for generations. The piece built gradually, like a story unfolding. Olivia's fingers moved with increasing confidence, finding the complex rhythms and harmonies that had once seemed impossible to master. She leaned into the crescendos, her body swaying slightly with the music's pull. She forgot about Paul and his challenge, forgot about her shyness, her self-doubt, the walls she'd built around herself at university. In this moment, she was just a vessel for something greater than herself, the universal language that had connected her to her grandmother, that now connected her to everyone in this room, whether they understood it or not. Behind her, the table had fallen completely silent. Even Paul, who had begun watching with a critical eye ready to spot mistakes, found himself leaning forward, his smirk fading into an expression of disbelief. The restaurant staff paused in their work. A waiter stood frozen with a tray of drinks listening. At nearby tables, conversations dwindled as diners turned to locate the source of the beautiful music filling the space. Olivia played on, unaware of the stir she was creating. The piece entered its most technically demanding section, and her fingers flew across the keys with a speed and precision that belied her "I play a little" confession. But it wasn't just her technical skill that captivated the listeners. It was the emotion she poured into every note. There was longing in the melody, and grief, and joy, and hope. The full spectrum of human experience distilled into music. As she approached the climax of the piece, tears slipped down her cheeks, but her playing never faltered. Lily watched her friend in amazement. In the 3 years she'd known Olivia, she'd never seen her like this. Transformed, radiant, powerful in her vulnerability. Thomas, sitting beside Lily, whispered, "Did you know she could play like that?" Lily could only shake her head, speechless. At the other end of the table, Paul sat rigid in his chair. His expression had shifted from disbelief to something more complex, a mixture of humiliation, admiration, and a dawning recognition of his own arrogance. He had played the same piece in his sophomore recital, and while his technique had been flawless, he knew, with the painful clarity of true self-awareness, that he had never played it like this, never reached the emotional depths that Olivia was effortlessly plumbing. An older man dining with his wife at a nearby table set down his fork and closed his eyes, transported by the music to another time, another place. His wife reached across the table to squeeze his hand, understanding without words what he was feeling. The restaurant manager, who had come to investigate why one of his servers was standing transfixed instead of delivering drinks, now stood in the doorway, unwilling to interrupt the unexpected performance. As Olivia approached the final passages of the piece, the emotion in the room was palpable. The ballad's conclusion, contemplative, resolving yet somehow still questioning, seemed to hold everyone in suspension. Her fingers played the final notes, gentle and deliberate, like the last words of a story told with care. When the final note faded into silence, Olivia kept her eyes closed, her hands still resting on the keys. For a moment she remained in the world of the music, not yet ready to return to reality. The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever. 3 heartbeats, 4, 5. Then the room erupted in applause. Olivia's eyes flew open, and for the first time she became aware of her surroundings again. Not just her friends at the birthday table, but the entire restaurant was applauding. Some people had stood up. The waiter with the tray of drinks was somehow managing to clap without spilling anything. Bewildered, Olivia turned on the bench to face the room. Her cheeks flushed with color when she realized how many people had been listening. This wasn't what she had intended. She'd been playing for herself, for her grandmother's memory. Perhaps a little bit to prove Paul wrong, but not for an audience of strangers. Yet the faces looking back at her weren't the judgmental ones she feared. They were moved, appreciative, some even tearful. An elderly woman at a nearby table dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. 2 teenage girls who had been scrolling on their phones throughout their meal were now looking at Olivia with undisguised admiration. The older man, who had been transported by her playing slowly, rose from his seat and approached the piano. He was well-dressed, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle but carrying a certain authority. "I hope you don't mind my interruption, but I had to tell you. That was extraordinary." Olivia, still overwhelmed by the response to her playing, managed a shy, "Thank you. I was a concert pianist for 40 years, the man continued. Retired now, but I've played that ballad hundreds of times and heard it played by some of the greatest pianists of our time." He paused, his eyes bright with emotion. "Your interpretation, it had something special. A rare honesty?" Olivia didn't know what to say. This felt like a dream, surreal and disconnected from her ordinary life of lecture halls and problem sets. "Who is your teacher?" the man asked. "My grandmother taught me," Olivia said, finding her voice. "She passed away 2 years ago." The man nodded, understanding in his eyes. "She taught you well. Not just technique, but the heart of music." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "I teach master classes at the conservatory downtown. If you ever want to play for me or just talk about music, well, I'd be honored." Stunned, Olivia accepted the card. "Thank you, Mr. Howard," he supplied. "Robert Howard." With a warm smile and a respectful nod, he returned to his table, where his wife greeted him with an affectionate look that suggested this wasn't the first time he'd been moved to approach a fellow musician. The applause had died down, and the restaurant was returning to its normal hum of activity, though many people still glanced Olivia's way with appreciation. She rose from the piano bench on slightly shaky legs, the emotional exertion of the performance leaving her feeling both drained and oddly energized. As she made her way back to the birthday table, Olivia saw varied expressions on her friends' faces. Lily was beaming with pride and surprise. Thomas looked impressed. Daniel was shaking his head in amazement, and Paul couldn't meet her eyes. He stared down at his plate, his face flushed with what might have been embarrassment, shame, or a complicated mixture of both. Olivia slid back into her seat, suddenly unsure what to do or say. She reached for her water glass, her throat dry after the intensity of the moment. "Olivia," Lily said, breaking the awkward silence. I don't even have words. Why didn't you ever tell me you could play like that?" Olivia shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention, yet also feeling something new, a quiet pride in her ability that she'd never allowed herself before. "It never came up." "Never came up?" Thomas repeated incredulously. "That's like Einstein saying, oh, this relativity thing. Never came up in conversation." A few people laughed, the tension at the table easing slightly. "Seriously," Lily continued, "you've been hiding this amazing talent all this time?" "We've been friends for 3 years." "I don't play to show off," Olivia said quietly. "It's personal. Something between me and my grandmother." She glanced down at Robert Howard's business card still in her hand. I never thought of it as something to share. From the end of the table, Paul's voice finally broke through, subdued and lacking its earlier confidence. You should share it. He looked up, finally meeting Olivia's gaze. What you just did? That wasn't just playing the piano. That was... He trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words, perhaps for the first time in his life. Olivia held his gaze steadily, neither accusatory nor triumphant. She didn't need his validation, she realized. The music had spoken for itself. The rest of the evening stretched before them, the dynamics of their small group forever altered by what had just occurred. Olivia took a sip of her water, wondering what her grandmother would say if she could see her now. Probably nothing at all. Maylin had always believed that sometimes the most profound truths required no explanation. Sometimes you just had to let the music speak. The rest of Lily's birthday dinner passed in a blur for Olivia. People kept coming to their table, other diners who wanted to compliment her playing, the restaurant manager who asked if she might be interested in playing there on weekends, a young girl who shyly asked if Olivia could teach her to play that beautiful song. Olivia answered them all politely but briefly, unaccustomed to being the center of attention. When the group finally left the restaurant around 11, the cool night air was a relief after the warmth of so many eyes on her. They stood in a loose circle on the sidewalk, making plans to continue the celebration at someone's apartment. Coming, Olivia? Lily asked, linking her arm through her friend's. We're thinking of heading to Dave's place. He's got that big living room, perfect for a proper party. Olivia shook her head. I think I'll head back to my dorm. I'm pretty tired. Are you sure? After bringing down the house like that, you deserve to celebrate a little. Maybe another time, Olivia said with a small smile. You guys go ahead. Lily studied her friend's face for a moment, then nodded. Okay, but this conversation isn't over. We're going to talk about this whole secret piano virtuoso thing very soon. After goodbyes and birthday wishes, the group headed off down the street, their laughter and chatter fading into the night. All except Paul, who lingered awkwardly near Olivia. Which way are you headed? He asked, hands stuffed in his pockets. Eastman Hall, she replied, naming her dormitory. I'm heading that direction too. Mind if I walk with you? Olivia hesitated, then shrugged. Suit yourself. They set off in silence, their footsteps echoing on the quiet campus paths. The spring night was clear, stars visible despite the campus lighting. Olivia kept her eyes fixed ahead, wondering what Paul wanted. An apology, perhaps? Or was he going to try to explain away his behavior? So, he finally said after they'd walked nearly a block. You played with your grandmother. It wasn't what Olivia had expected him to say. Yes. Was she a professional? She studied at Juilliard, Olivia said. But she left before graduating. She met my grandfather, fell in love, moved to his small town. Opened a piano studio instead, Paul nodded, digesting this. She must have been really good. She was. Another silence fell between them. They passed the science building, its windows dark except for a few labs where graduate students worked late into the night. Why math? Paul asked suddenly. I mean, if you can play like that, why aren't you in the music program? Olivia considered the question. It wasn't the first time she'd been asked something similar, though usually by her parents, who had always supported her musical education, but never quite understood why she didn't pursue it professionally. I love math, she said simply. The patterns, the logic, the way everything connects. It makes sense to me. She paused, then added, and I love music too, but differently. How so? Math is clean, precise. There's always a right answer, even if it's hard to find. She gestured vaguely with one hand, searching for the words. Music is messier. It's emotional, subjective. I need both in my life, but I don't need to make a career out of both. Paul was quiet, seeming to truly consider her answer. I've never thought about it that way, he admitted. For me, music has always been the only thing. The thing I'm best at. The thing that makes me, me. They crossed the main quad, passing the library with its imposing columns. A few students sat on the steps, their faces illuminated by laptop screens. That must be nice, Olivia said. Having that certainty. Paul laughed, but there was little humor in it. Is that what it looks like from the outside? Certainty? He shook his head. It's more like pressure, always needing to be the best, always needing to prove myself. To who? Everyone. My parents who pay for my very expensive music education. My professors who expect me to win competitions myself. He kicked at a pebble on the path. Mostly myself, Olivia thought about this. It was strange to hear Paul express insecurity. He'd always seemed so confident, so sure of his place in the world. Is that why you acted like that tonight? She asked. Why you tried to embarrass me? Paul winced. I was a complete jerk, wasn't I? Yes. He didn't try to deny it or excuse his behavior, which surprised Olivia. They walked a few more steps in silence. I'm sorry, he said finally. Truly. When you said you played a little, I assumed you meant, well, not what you showed us tonight, and I guess I saw an opportunity to feel superior. He ran a hand through his hair. That sounds terrible when I say it out loud. It is terrible, Olivia agreed, but without heat. But at least you're being honest about it. They reached the fork in the path where they would need to go separate ways. Olivia to her dorm, Paul to the apartment he shared with other music students. You're playing, Paul said, turning to face her directly for the first time during their walk. It was beautiful. Not just technically good, but moving. You made me feel things. He looked down at his shoes. I've been told my playing is technically perfect but emotionally lacking. My professor says I play with my hands and my head but not with my heart. He looked up again, meeting Olivia's eyes. How do you do it? The vulnerability in his question caught Olivia off guard. This wasn't the arrogant Paul from dinner, the one who had tried to humiliate her. This was someone else, someone real beneath the polished exterior. I don't know if I can explain it, she said. My grandmother always said music is a language. You can learn the vocabulary, the grammar, the proper pronunciation, but if you have nothing to say, it's just empty words. And you have something to say. Olivia thought about her grandmother, about the hours they'd spent together at the piano, about the grief of losing her that still felt fresh some days. I play what I feel. That's all, Paul nodded slowly. I think. I might have forgotten how to do that. Somewhere between the competitions and the recitals and the grades. An idea occurred to Olivia then, something that surprised her. Do you want to play together sometime? Play together? Like a duet? No, I mean, just play, for fun. No judgment, no audience, just remembering why we love it. Paul looked at her with surprise that quickly shifted to something warmer. I'd like that. A lot, actually. Okay then. Olivia offered a small smile. Good night, Paul. Good night, Olivia. They parted ways, Olivia continuing toward her dorm with lighter steps than before. The encounter with Paul had been unexpected, his apology and vulnerability even more so. It felt like the beginning of something, though she wasn't sure what. When Olivia reached her room, her roommate Kate was already asleep, the room dark except for the glow of Kate's phone charger. Olivia got ready for bed quietly, her mind still buzzing with the events of the evening. As she lay in bed, she thought about how strange life could be. This morning, she had been just another math student, her love for music a private thing, something she kept hidden away like a secret treasure. Now, Robert Howard's business card sat on her desk, an invitation to a world she had never considered entering. Paul's apology and their tentative peace hung in the air like a new possibility. And somewhere in the digital ether, something else was taking shape. Something Olivia didn't yet know about, because what Olivia didn't realize was that Thomas had recorded her performance on his phone. Not the whole piece. His battery had been low and he'd only captured about 2 minutes of her playing. But those 2 minutes showed Olivia at the height of the ballade, her face transformed by emotion, her fingers dancing across the keys with both technical brilliance and raw feeling. Thomas hadn't planned to do anything with the video. He'd recorded it simply because he'd been moved by the moment and wanted to remember it. But after the group left Olivia and Paul on the sidewalk, Lily had asked him to send it to her. She's my best friend and I had no idea she could play like that, Lily had said. I want to be able to show people how amazing she is. So Thomas had sent the video. And Lily, still buzzing from birthday drinks and the excitement of discovering her friend's hidden talent, had posted it to her social media accounts. My brilliant friend Olivia, who hides her light under a bushel. Watch what happened when some jerk challenged her to prove she could play piano. Hidden talent, music genius, no Chopin. By the time Olivia fell asleep, the video had already been viewed 300 times. By morning it would be thousands. By the end of the weekend, tens of thousands. The algorithm had caught hold of it, a perfect bite-sized piece of emotion. A narrative that resonated. The quiet girl with the secret talent. The arrogant challenger put in his place. The raw emotional power of the performance itself. Olivia slept peacefully, unaware that her private moment was rapidly becoming very public indeed. The next morning, Saturday, Olivia woke late. Kate's bed was empty, her roommate likely at her weekend job at the campus bookstore. Olivia stretched lazily, enjoying the rare opportunity to sleep in without an alarm. She reached for her phone to check the time and was surprised to see a flood of notifications. Text messages from Lily. OMG, check your social. You're going viral. Several friend requests and follow requests from people she didn't know. Emails from addresses she didn't recognize with subject lines like piano performance inquiry and saw your video. And oddly, a message from the university's music department. Dear Ms. Chen, Professor Rivera would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience regarding your piano performance. Please call to schedule an appointment. Confused, Olivia sat up in bed, fully awake now. What was going on? She opened the link Lily had sent and felt her stomach drop. There she was, captured in the middle of playing Chopin, her eyes closed, her face reflecting every emotion the music evoked. The video had over 20,000 views already, and the comments section was filled with praise, questions about who she was, and tags to share it further. Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she set the phone down. The very thing she had always kept private, her music, her emotional connection to it, was now being shared with strangers all over the internet. The thought made her feel exposed, vulnerable in a way she wasn't prepared for. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Paul. Have you seen the video? Are you okay? The fact that even Paul was checking on her well-being showed just how much had changed in one night. Olivia took a deep breath. Then another. Her grandmother had always told her that life sometimes takes unexpected turns, and the true test of character is how you handle them. Well, Grandma, Olivia whispered to the empty room. What do I do now? Olivia sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at her phone with a mixture of disbelief and anxiety. The video of her playing piano had now reached over 50,000 views. People were sharing it with comments like, "This is what raw talent looks like, and watch until the end, you'll get chills." Her phone buzzed with another notification. Lily was calling. Hello? Olivia answered, her voice small. Oh my gosh, Olivia. Lily's voice exploded through the speaker. Have you seen what's happening? You're famous. Lily, why did you post that video? Olivia asked, trying to keep the accusation out of her voice. You know I'm private about, well, everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, Lily said, her excitement deflating. I honestly didn't think it would go beyond our friends. I was just so proud of you and amazed by your playing. I wanted people to see how incredible you are. Olivia sighed. She couldn't really blame Lily. Her friend had always been more outgoing, more comfortable in the spotlight. She probably couldn't imagine why anyone would want to keep such a talent hidden. It's okay, Olivia said finally. I'm just overwhelmed. Do you want me to take it down? Olivia considered this. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but another part, a quiet voice that sounded strangely like her grandmother, wondered if this unexpected turn of events might be leading somewhere important. Let me think about it, she said instead. I need to process all this. After hanging up, Olivia forced herself to look through more of the comments on the video. Most were overwhelmingly positive. People praising her technique, her emotional depth, asking who she was and if she had other performances online. Some were comparing her favorably to famous pianists. A few even asked if she had an album or recordings they could buy. Then there were comments that made her breath catch. This reminds me of how my mother used to play. She passed last year. Thank you for bringing back that memory. I've been learning piano for 2 years and was about to quit. This just inspired me to keep going. I've never understood classical music before, but this made me feel something. Can anyone tell me what piece this is so I can hear more? These comments hit Olivia in an unexpected way. Her playing had touched people she'd never meet, had created connections across the digital void. Her grandmother had always said music was a bridge between souls. Olivia had always thought she meant between the player and the immediate listener. But perhaps the bridge could extend further. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Olivia quickly ran a hand through her hair and straightened her rumpled t-shirt before answering. It was Kate, her roommate, looking both apologetic and excited. Hey, So there are some people asking for you in the lobby. People? What people? Kate shifted uncomfortably. Like the editor of the school paper and someone from the local news website. And Professor Rivera from the music department. They all want to talk to you about some video. Olivia's stomach dropped. Tell them I'm not here. I already said you were, Kate admitted sheepishly. Sorry, I didn't know it was a secret or anything. It's fine, Olivia sighed. Can you tell them I'll be down in 20 minutes? I need to shower and change. Kate nodded and left. Olivia leaned against the closed door, heart racing. This was getting out of hand quickly. How was she supposed to handle this kind of attention? She was a math major, not a performer. She played piano for herself, for the memory of her grandmother, not for whatever this was becoming. Her phone buzzed again with a text from Paul. The vultures are circling. Need backup? Despite everything, Olivia smiled. It was strange how quickly things had changed between them. Less than 24 hours ago, Paul had been trying to publicly humiliate her. Now he was offering support. Maybe, she texted back. I've apparently got an impromptu press conference in the dorm lobby in 20 minutes. On my way, came the immediate reply. Don't go down until I get there. Olivia showered quickly, her mind racing faster than the water. By the time she dressed in jeans and a simple blue sweater, she had decided on an approach. She couldn't hide from this, but she could control how she engaged with it. True to his word, Paul was waiting in the hallway outside her room when she emerged. He looked different today, more casual in jeans and a faded t-shirt advertising a piano competition from 3 years ago. His hair unstyled and slightly messy. You clean up nice, he said with a small smile. Ready for your adoring public? Hardly, Olivia replied, but she appreciated his attempt to lighten the mood. Thanks for coming. Consider it part of my ongoing apology. He fell into step beside her as they headed for the stairs. So what's your plan? Answer a few questions politely but briefly. Make it clear I'm not looking for attention. Hope they get bored and leave me alone. Paul chuckled. You really don't understand how this works, do you? A mysterious math major with the soul of a concert pianist makes for a great story. They're not going to get bored easily. Then what would you suggest? Olivia asked, pausing at the top of the stairs. Paul considered for a moment. Own it on your terms. You have something they want, your story, more performances. You get to decide what you're willing to give. It was actually good advice. Olivia nodded thoughtfully as they descended to the lobby, which was more crowded than she'd expected. Professor Rivera, a severe-looking woman Olivia had seen around campus but never spoken to, was there with another man from the music department. A student with a press badge from the university newspaper was setting up a voice recorder. A woman with a camera and a man with a notepad who appeared to be from a local news outlet were speaking in low voices. And in the corner, slightly separate from the others, stood Robert Howard, the retired pianist from the restaurant. When Olivia entered, all eyes turned to her. She felt her cheeks flush with heat, but straightened her spine and walked forward with as much confidence as she could muster. Paul stayed close behind, a reassuring presence. Ms. Chen. Professor Rivera stepped forward first, extending a hand. I'm Helen Rivera, chair of the piano department. This is my colleague, Professor Walsh, who teaches our advanced performance seminars. Olivia shook their hands, murmuring polite greetings. We've seen the video of your performance, Professor Rivera continued. It's caused quite a stir, as you can see. She gestured to the journalists. But before you speak with them, we'd like a word in private, if you don't mind. Actually, Olivia said, finding her voice, I think I'd prefer to address everyone at once. I'm not sure I have the energy for multiple conversations about this. Professor Rivera looked momentarily taken aback but nodded. As you wish. Olivia turned to face the small crowd, grateful for Paul's steady presence beside her. I understand you all have questions about the video. I want to clarify that I didn't know it was being recorded, and I certainly didn't expect it to be shared online. The student journalist spoke up. Are you upset about it being posted without your permission? Olivia considered the question carefully. I was surprised and initially uncomfortable. I've always been private about my piano playing. It's something personal connected to my grandmother who taught me and who passed away 2 years ago. She took a breath. But I've been reading comments from people who were moved by the performance, and that means something to me. Ms. Chen, the local news reporter, stepped forward. Our viewers would love to know more about your background. Are you a music student? How long have you been playing? I'm actually a mathematics major, Olivia replied, causing a few surprised murmurs. I've been playing piano since I was 6. My grandmother was my only teacher. And she studied at Juilliard, Paul added from beside her. Olivia shot him a grateful look. Would you consider changing your major to music? Professor Walsh asked, his tone suggesting he thought she should. No, Olivia said firmly. I love mathematics. It's what I want to pursue professionally. Music is something else for me, something personal. But with your talent, Professor Walsh began, but Olivia cut him off gently. My talent is mine to use as I choose, she said, surprised by her own boldness. And I choose to keep it as something I do for love, not for grades or a career. Robert Howard, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward with a smile. Well said, my dear. The world has enough professional musicians driven by ambition rather than passion. He turned to the professors. No offense intended to your program, of course. Professor Rivera's lips thinned, but she nodded stiffly. The student journalist raised his hand slightly. Would you be willing to perform again? Maybe for a proper recording? The video quality on what's circulating isn't great. Before Olivia could respond, several others chimed in with similar requests. The local reporter wanted to know if she'd play for their segment. Professor Rivera mentioned an upcoming showcase where they could feature her. Even Kate, who had reappeared in the lobby, suggested a dorm talent show. The cacophony of voices asking for pieces of her made Olivia's chest tighten. This was exactly what she'd feared. Her private joy becoming a public commodity, something everyone felt entitled to. I think, Paul said loudly, noticing her distress, that Ms. Chen has answered enough questions for today. Olivia shot him a grateful look before addressing the group. Thank you all for your interest. I need some time to think about all this. Music has always been something deeply personal for me, and this sudden attention is a lot to process. She turned to leave, but Professor Rivera caught her arm. Ms. Chen, talent like yours comes with a certain responsibility. To hide it away would be, with all due respect, Professor, Olivia interrupted, gently but firmly removing her arm from the woman's grasp. My talent doesn't come with any obligations except those I choose to accept. Robert Howard stepped forward again, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. If I may offer a suggestion? The community center where I volunteer has a small recital space. Very intimate, no pressure. If you'd like to play again on your own terms, perhaps that would be a good place to start. He handed her another card with the center's address handwritten on the back. No recordings allowed. Just music for the joy of it. Olivia took the card, genuinely appreciative of the offer. Thank you. I'll think about it. With that, she turned and walked back toward the stairs, Paul falling into step beside her. The voices rose again behind them, but Olivia didn't look back. That was impressive, Paul said when they reached the second floor. Standing up to Rivera isn't easy. She's used to getting her way. I surprised myself, Olivia admitted. I'm not usually so assertive. Well, it looked good on you, Paul smiled. So what now? Olivia sighed, leaning against the wall. I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to hide in my room until this all blows over. Another part wonders what my grandmother would want me to do with this unexpected opportunity. Olivia looked down at Howard's card in her hand. She always said music was meant to be shared, even though she never pushed me to perform. Paul was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. What if you did it your way? Not for grades or a career or even recognition, just sharing what you love on your terms. Maybe, Olivia said, not committing but not dismissing the idea either. I need to think. Fair enough. Paul checked his watch. I should go. I've got a practice room reserved at 1. But text me if you need anything, okay? Olivia nodded, oddly touched by his concern. Thanks for the backup. After Paul left, Olivia returned to her room, grateful to find it empty. She needed space to process everything that had happened. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, but she silenced it and set it aside. Instead, she opened her laptop and hesitantly typed her own name into the search bar. The video appeared immediately, now with over 100,000 views. But there were also other results. People had already created reaction videos. Musicians were posting their own renditions of the piece inspired by her. Someone had even started a fan page. It was surreal, seeing herself through the eyes of strangers. Some called her a prodigy. Others speculated about her training. Still others created elaborate backstories for her that were far more dramatic than the truth. Olivia closed the laptop and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. How had her life changed so dramatically in less than 24 hours? Yesterday, she had been an anonymous math student with a private passion for music. Today, she was, what, a viral sensation? An overnight celebrity in the tiny bubble of classical music enthusiasts? Whatever she was becoming, Olivia knew one thing for certain. She needed to decide who she wanted to be in this new reality. Not what others wanted from her, but what she wanted for herself. She reached for her phone and texted Paul. I think I might take Mr. Howard up on his offer, but I have a condition. 2 weeks later, Olivia stood in the small performance space of the community center, running her fingers lightly over the keys of the upright piano. It wasn't a grand like the one in the restaurant, but it had character, a warm, rich tone that spoke of years of use by loving hands. What do you think? Robert Howard asked, watching her explore the instrument. It's lovely, Olivia said honestly. Reminds me of my grandmother's piano. Howard smiled, pleased by her response. It was donated by a family who kept it for 3 generations. They wanted it to go somewhere it would be played and appreciated. The space around them was simple but welcoming. Rows of folding chairs arranged in a semicircle around the piano, large windows letting in the late afternoon sunlight, a few modest floral arrangements adding color to the room. Are you nervous about tonight? Howard asked. Olivia considered the question. Less than I expected to be, she admitted. This feels right somehow. After the chaotic day when her video had gone viral, Olivia had done a lot of thinking. She turned down the university newspaper's request for an interview and politely declined Professor Rivera's invitation to perform at the music department showcase. But she had texted Robert Howard and accepted his offer of the community center recital, with one condition. That condition was now setting up his music stand at the side of the piano, looking significantly less arrogant than he had 2 weeks ago. All set, Paul said, adjusting the height of the stand. We've got about 45 minutes before people start arriving. Want to run through the program once more? Olivia nodded, taking a seat at the piano bench. Howard smiled at them both and discreetly left the room, giving them space to practice. When Olivia had told Paul her condition, that he perform with her, as a genuine duet partner rather than a competitor, he'd been surprised but quickly agreed. Their practice sessions over the past 2 weeks had been revelatory for both of them. You know, Paul said, positioning his violin under his chin. I still can't believe you suggested this. Why not? Because I was horrible to you. Most people wouldn't want anything to do with me after that. Olivia shrugged. Most people haven't heard you play Rachmaninoff at 3 in the morning in an empty practice room. Paul smiled at the memory. 3 days after the video incident, Olivia had been unable to sleep and had wandered to the music building, hoping to find an empty room where she could play without an audience. She'd heard Paul before she saw him, playing with a raw emotion she wouldn't have believed him capable of. She'd stood in the doorway listening, not wanting to interrupt, but he'd eventually noticed her. That's how you really play, she'd said simply, when no one's watching. That night had been the beginning of an unlikely friendship and creative partnership. Olivia had discovered that beneath Paul's competitive exterior was a musician who loved music as deeply as she did, but who had nearly lost that love beneath the pressure of perfection. Ready? Olivia asked now, positioning her hands on the keys. Paul nodded, and they began their final run-through of the evening's program. A selection of pieces they had chosen together, music that spoke to both of them in different ways. The Rachmaninoff piece that Olivia had heard Paul playing that night, a Chopin nocturne that had been her grandmother's favorite. A Bach piece they had arranged themselves for piano and violin. They moved together through the music with the easy communication of musicians who had found a genuine connection. Where once there had been rivalry, now there was collaboration. Where there had been judgment, now there was appreciation of their different strengths. As the final notes of their practice faded, they heard applause from the doorway. Howard had returned with Lily and Thomas, who were helping to set up refreshments for after the performance. That was beautiful, Lily said, her eyes shining. I'm so glad you two figured out how to work together instead of against each other. Took us long enough, Paul said with a self-deprecating smile. Sometimes the best partnerships come from unexpected beginnings, Howard observed. Now you two should take a break before the performance. Have some water, relax a bit. As they stepped away from their instruments, Olivia felt a flutter of anticipation but not anxiety. Tonight wasn't about proving herself or seeking validation. It was about sharing something meaningful with a carefully chosen audience. Friends. A few fellow students who had shown genuine interest in music rather than gossip. Elderly residents from the retirement community next door who rarely got to attend live performances. Children from the center's after-school program who were being introduced to classical music for the first time. No cameras allowed. No recordings. Just the ephemeral magic of live music, existing in the moment and then living on only in memory. "Your grandmother would be proud," Lily said softly, handing Olivia a bottle of water. "Not just of your playing, but of how you've handled everything." Olivia smiled, touched by her friend's words. "I think she knew me better than I knew myself. She never pushed me to perform, but she always said my music was a gift meant to be shared." "Speaking of sharing," Thomas said, joining their conversation, "that video has over 1 million views now." "I'm trying not to think about that," Olivia said with a small laugh. "But I've made peace with it. In a strange way, I'm grateful it happened. Even though I posted it without asking," Lily still looked guilty about that. "Even then, it pushed me out of my comfort zone, made me confront some things about myself." Olivia glanced toward Paul, who was deep in conversation with Howard, and it led to unexpected connections. As the evening progressed and the small performance space filled with people, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was how she wanted to share her music, on her own terms, in a space where it could touch people directly and personally. When it was time to begin, Howard stepped forward to welcome everyone and introduce the performers. He kept it simple, making no mention of viral videos or internet fame, just presenting them as two talented young musicians with a shared passion for music. Olivia and Paul took their places at the piano and violin. They exchanged a glance, a small nod, and began to play. From the first notes, Olivia felt that familiar sensation of the world falling away, leaving only the music. But now, instead of being alone in that world, she was aware of Paul beside her, moving through the same musical landscape. And beyond them, the audience, not faces to impress or critics to please, but fellow travelers in this moment of shared beauty. They played through their program, each piece flowing naturally into the next. The Rachmaninoff was passionate and intense. The Bach was mathematically precise yet emotionally rich. And when they reached the Chopin Nocturne, Olivia closed her eyes and played for her grandmother. In that moment, she felt her grandmother's presence so strongly it was as if she sat beside her on the bench, guiding her hands as she had done when Olivia was a child. The music became a bridge across time and space, connecting past to present, linking those who were gone to those who remained. When the final note of the nocturne faded, there was a moment of perfect silence. That magical pause when a piece of music has moved listeners so deeply, they need time to return to the ordinary world. Then came the applause, warm and genuine. Olivia opened her eyes to see several people wiping away tears. An elderly woman in the front row nodded to her with understanding in her eyes, as if the music had spoken directly to her. A young girl who couldn't have been more than 8 stared at the piano with wonder. As they moved into the final piece of the evening, Olivia felt something shift within her. The boundary she had maintained between her mathematical self and her musical self seemed less rigid, less necessary. Both were expressions of the same person, the one who found beauty in patterns, who sought meaning in the underlying structures of both numbers and notes. The last piece was one they had chosen together. Not a classical composition, but something more contemporary. A piece that blended classical traditions with modern sensibilities. As they played, Olivia felt herself not performing for the audience but sharing with them, inviting them into this world she and Paul had created together. When it was over, the applause was enthusiastic but somehow respectful, as if the audience understood that they had witnessed something personal and meaningful. As people gathered around them afterwards, offering congratulations and sharing how the music had affected them, Olivia felt a deep satisfaction unlike anything she had experienced before. This wasn't the adrenaline rush of academic achievement or the validation of external praise. It was the quiet joy of genuine connection. "So," Paul said when they finally had a moment alone, "what's next for us?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Us?" "The unlikely duo," he clarified with a smile. "The math major and the music snob who somehow make beautiful music together." Olivia considered the question. I don't know exactly, but I think there will be more evenings like this. Not too many, I still have differential equations to master, but enough to keep the music alive. Paul nodded, understanding. On your terms. On our terms, she corrected. If you're interested in continuing. I am. There was a sincerity in his voice that hadn't been there when they first met. You've reminded me why I started playing in the first place. Before the competitions and the pressure and all of that. From across the room, Howard caught Olivia's eye and gave her an approving nod. Lily was showing the young girl from the audience how the piano keys worked. Thomas was deep in conversation with one of the elderly residents, who appeared to be sharing a story about music from her youth. This, Olivia realized, was what her grandmother had meant about sharing music. Not spotlights and recordings and fame, but these intimate moments of human connection. The video that had gone viral had captured her playing, but it couldn't capture this, the living, breathing experience of music shared in real time with real people. You know, Paul said, following her gaze. I used to think success in music meant sold-out concert halls and rave reviews. I'm starting to think I had it all wrong, Olivia smiled. Maybe we both had some things wrong, and some things right. Outside the windows of the community center, evening had given way to night, stars appearing in the clear sky. Inside, people lingered, reluctant to break the spell of the evening. There was talking and laughter, the clinking of refreshment cups, the occasional tentative press of a piano key by a child given permission to explore. Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here, from the private joy of playing for herself, to the unexpected exposure of the viral video, to this new way of sharing her gift. It hadn't been a straight path, and there had been uncomfortable moments along the way. But standing here now, watching the ripple effects of their music move through the room, connecting strangers to each other and to themselves, Olivia knew she wouldn't change how it had unfolded. Sometimes it took a push, even an unwelcome one, to discover new possibilities within yourself. Sometimes the people who challenged you most became the ones who understood you best. And sometimes the very thing you tried hardest to keep private turned out to be the gift you were meant to share all along.